Ivey and Stu Ungar, recognizable names to anyone who knows anything about poker. Two of the greatest poker minds within their own time. But just how exactly do these two players compare and contrast? And who among them is the greatest of all time? Let's first take a look at just how each player's accomplishments compare to each other. In case of Ivey, he has won 10 WSOP bracelets, has 0 main event bracelets, has 59 WSOP cashes, and total tournament earnings of $26.4 million. In case of Stu Ungar, he has won 5 WSOP bracelets, which includes 3 main event bracelets, 15 WSOP cashes, and total tournament earnings of $3.3 million. Undoubtedly, both players clearly possess an impressive resume of tournament wins and cashes, and although Ivey surpasses Ungar in total tournament victories, Stu Ungar holds the upper hand in main event bracelets. Then again, Stewie wasn't facing the massive tournament fields that's become the main event in recent years. His last main event victory in 1997 came against a field of 312 entrants. Compare that to the current field of 5,000 to 7,000 players, and it's clear to see why even the top pros such as Ivey are a slim 200 to 1 shot at best to win the whole thing. But then again, Stu Ungar made the WSOP main event final table 4 times and won 3 of them. The only time he failed to win was the year that he didn't show up on day 2. That year, Stu Ungar had a massive chip lead after the first day. When day 2 started, Ungar did not show up and was later found to have OD'd in his hotel room. His stack was blinded off. He had such a massive stack that he still made the final table. That is an achievement in itself. So as you see, it's really difficult to compare these two poker phenoms because the situations were very different when they were in their primes. But we still know how both played, and we know their character and lifestyle, and with that information, we can probably compare it to the traits of a winning poker player and probably come up with some solid numbers on who among them is the greatest of all time. Number 1. Intelligence. At the highest levels, everyone's experience, level, and knowledge of the game will be near equal. Whoever can adjust to an opponent faster and outguess what adjustments the opponents are making will come out on top. That said, there is certainly a correlation between intelligence and skill in poker. But when you're talking about genius level IQ with photographic memory, I think Stu Ungar here takes the cake. Using the skills of memory, he was able to count cards and was banned from the casinos in Las Vegas. One time, he had a bet with Bob Stupak for $10,000. The bet was that Stu Ungar had to see 51 cards in a deck and guess the 52nd card. Stu Ungar, using his mathematical skills, did it with ease, and Stupak lost $10,000. So in terms of sheer intelligence and genius IQ, Stu Ungar would be ahead of Ivey in this case. Number 2. Discipline and control. Discipline is one of the most important traits a poker player can possess. It can help you make good folds when frustrated, put in more study time, and leave the table when the games aren't worth playing. Poker has nothing to do with emotion, and yet there are few games or sports where emotion run as rampant as in poker. Although we can consider both Phil and Stu Ungar as big-time risk takers, we can safely say that Stu Ungar had a huge lack of control and discipline. There were many occasions where a few bad beats made Stu Ungar tilt off his entire stack. He also played in other games where he was a huge underdog, but he still played those games because he was such an action junkie. There were even times when Stu Ungar could not make it to the poker table because he was so high on drugs. His lack of control on his addictions made him lose millions of dollars. Phil Ivey, on the other hand, is much more cold and calculated and makes far better rational decisions. He has no demons like Stu had. Sure, Phil Ivey goes on tilt once in a while, but Stu Ungar's tilt could be compared to tilt on steroids. So in terms of discipline at the poker table and sheer control over oneself, Phil Ivey takes the point. Number 3. Bankroll management. Money management is very important, perhaps even crucial, for poker success. You have to treat poker as a business, both in terms of bankroll management and lifestyle spending. As we all know, both of our poker superstars have very little regard for money. It is also said that to play the highest stakes, you need to have gamble in you and not care about money. That being said, Stu Ungar has been broke more times than one can remember. His habits of gambling at sports and racetracks saw him lose his entire bankroll on more than one occasion. Running from debts and then winning big to pay them off became a routine for Stu Ungar. Even after winning the main event in 1997 and winning a cool $1 million, he was dead broke just a few months later. This just shows us the horrible money management that Stu Ungar was used to. It is estimated that his total losses amounts to a staggering $30 million. Phil Ivey, on the other hand, is a shark. When Ivey walks into a casino or poker room, people usually have to save their money from being taken by Ivey. Many casino owners consider Ivey as a shark, and they absolutely don't like it when Ivey visits their establishment because Phil Ivey is so good at what he does. Although Ivey gambles big, he's not reckless. He knows when to stop when things don't go his way. He's also the owner of multiple businesses, and making money just comes natural to him. It is for this reason that Phil Ivey's net worth is estimated to be more than $100 million. So in the sector of money and bankroll management, Phil Ivey takes the lead from Stu Ungar. Number 4. Confidence. This quality is essential when you're at the table, and people having better self-confidence are usually the better performers. Although you don't have to be the bravest person to have walked on earth to be a good poker player, the game does require a certain amount of recklessness. What I mean here is that you can't be afraid of losing ever. This means that you need to be capable of always playing the hand the best way, even if that means you might bust out of the tournament before the next pay jump, or lose a big portion of your session earnings. If a certain move is correct from a game perspective, you need to be able to make it and not think about any outside factors. In this department, both Phil Ivey and Stu Ungar oozed confidence. When both these players sat at the table, they sat there to win. They do not think about risk tolerance. Risk tolerance means being able to handle loss. Confidence means you expect to win. In order to develop a strong self-confidence, nothing's better than experience. Phil Ivey has tremendous amount of poker experience. Phil Ivey started playing poker at the age of 7, and in his teens, he used to play more than 12 hours a day for almost 5 years. There were times when he lost his entire bankroll and did not have the money to go home, but his self-confidence kept him coming back to the poker tables, and eventually, he was being recognized by his peers to be one of the greats. Stu Ungar had less poker experience than Phil Ivey because he started playing poker much later than Ivey. He was good in almost all card games, but he considered gin rummy his speciality. That being said, he was no pushover when it came to poker. After learning poker, he went to play his first tournament, which was the 1980 WSOP main event, and he won, destroying opponents with his aggressive style. Insanely, he even went on to win the main event the next year, beating poker legends like Perry Green and Doyle Brunson. Even after winning the main event in 1997, Stu Ungar said that he was the only one who could beat himself. So in terms of confidence, I guess it's fair to say that both these guys are evenly matched. Top pros who had the chance to play Stu Ungar in his glory days are quick to note the similarities between Stu and Phil's game. Chip Reese, considered by many to be the top cash game player in the world, said in an interview that Phil Ivey and Stu Ungar have some similar styles. They are both aggressive players and they play a lot of hands. Both of them also aren't afraid to bluff. Eric Seidel, another top poker pro, added that Stewie was very good at reading people and he had the incredible card sense, obviously because he was the best gin player ever. Even he thinks Phil Ivey is very similar. According to him, Phil Ivey is very good at analyzing the psychology. He thinks extremely well at the table. However, he also added that Stu Ungar was a really active player, but he does not have as many gears as Phil Ivey. Phil's presence at the poker table is very stable and focused, where Stewie had the focus but not the same stability that Ivey has. Mike Sexton said that one thing that is common between both Stu and Phil is without a doubt their hunger for action. Both have been described by fellow poker players as action junkies, although with a key element, Ivey knows how to apply the brakes, Stu Ungar not so much. So from all the attributes we have come to know about these two poker players, we can draw some conclusions. Due to better bankroll management in general, Phil Ivey would be having a high net worth than Stu Ungar, and so Phil would be able to enter more higher buy-in tournaments, and with the law of large numbers would manage to make more money than Stu Ungar. Also, having more discipline than Stewie, he would be able to minimize his losses more than Ungar. So Phil Ivey would be more successful than Stu Ungar. One should note here that by success, I mean Phil Ivey would be able to make more money than Stu Ungar in the long run. However, if the two were face to face with each other in a heads-up cash game, then things would even out. And Stu Ungar may even have an edge over Ivey due to his high IQ and mathematical skills. But as No Limit Hold'em is a very volatile game and often comes down to luck or a cold deck, it is really hard to tell who would win in a heads-up match between the two. When some pros were asked who would win a match between Stu Ungar and Phil Ivey, Eric Seidel said that in Stu Ungar's prime and Phil Ivey playing well, he would go with Phil Ivey for the stability factor. Mike Sexton, however, said that in No Limit Hold'em, no one would come on top playing against Stu Ungar. Chip Reese took Ivey's favor, saying Phil Ivey has more character than Stewie does at the poker table, and Phil's character alone would outmanage Stewie and figure out a way to beat him. In my personal opinion, if all things between these two players were equal, I would give the edge to Stu Ungar, but since all things are not equal and Phil Ivey has better poker traits than Stu Ungar, my money would be on Phil Ivey. But regardless of how these two compare in bracelets and cashes, they have both become legends of the poker world. Stu Ungar was a living legend all the way up to his unfortunate death in 1998, as is Phil Ivey today. Let us know in the comments on who you think is the greatest player among these two poker legends. If you like this video, leave a like, subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.